Hi everybody, today we're going to be working on using some of those principles of angles and proportion and measurement to draw something a little more complicated than the cube, this nice cat here. When we used angles and measurements and proportions in the beginning of a drawing, it can feel a little slow and tedious, but if you get those things right in the beginning, your drawing is going to have a lot more power and believability. And the more you draw this way, the easier it gets and the quicker the process becomes. But on these drawings, I really want you to show me your straight lines, your angles, your proportions. So even if you feel like you can draw this cat pretty well already, this is sort of like a math assignment where you want to show your work, not just the final answer, but how you got there. So when I look at this cat's head, I see that it's overall tilting at an angle something like that. I'm just going to mark that angle. And the top of its head is at about that same angle. I'm going to put the top of its head somewhere around here. And then we've got another angle coming back this way. But before I get to that, I checked some different proportional measurements, and I found that if we measure from the top of the nose here to the bottom of the chin, that it's a useful constant to have because it equals almost 4 of these units in terms of the length of the cat's head. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it also equals about twice the height of the cat's head, 1 and 2. So I'm going to draw this life size, or the size of the photograph. The length, the width of the cat's head will be 1, 2 of these, so right about here. And I'm going to put a line in here just representing the front of the cat's mouth. And take this measurement again. We know this is about 4 times that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right about here is the rectangular shape that we'll put the cat in. I'm looking at this on the laptop and I see that some of these angles don't look quite right, but just follow along with me. So from the bottom of the chin to the nose, about here, this is about the middle. From the bottom of the chin to the eye and up to the top of the wide part of the head is about 1 of these units. So here's 1, here's 1. A line up here. The nose starts out at that angle. And then we get more of a slope here about halfway through, about that angle. So I'm just roughing in the shapes in general right now. We'll refine them and fine-tune them later on. So the head comes along as kind of flat up here, and then at one point it levels off and is almost horizontal. So let's see how that compares. We're about here. Again, this is our constant. Take this to about here, and that's about where the ear starts. Right about there. And at that point, the head levels off to be almost almost even with the top of the paper. Very slight angle. So right now it's not looking much like a cat, but we've got the general shapes here. It's going to slope down a little more. Now how far down? If we measure from the chin to the upper lip, if that's what cats have as lips, not quite half. Somewhere about here. We have the mouth starts at an angle like this, and then it sort of flattens out, tips up a little bit, more like that. Once again, we have from this constant to here is about the wide, the end of the iris there, so part of the eye. Here, here. Just a little more eye there. The top of the eye is pretty much a horizontal line, even with the paper. Then we've got this angle here. And completing the triangular shape of the eye. This is the way I started drawing, and as you go along you'll make more adjustments and fine-tune things. Right now I can see that we've got the eye a little bit too big. I'm going to measure from this bridge of the nose to, it's about the same length as to the corner of the eye. So we want to go from here to here. The eye is somewhere in there. We get a little bit of a curve here. The nose is kind of at a straight horizontal angle. The black part of the nose. The cats have a little bit of an underbite. So there's that jaw. If you draw this line in now without all the whiskers and everything, it looks like it's smiling, but we'll work on that later. Then we have, where do we get the neck here? This is our constant, almost the same there when you start joining into the neck, so about here. And then we've got this angle here. There's a little line that comes out from the eye, curves down. This top part of the eye is pretty dark. And so is this little mascara the cat's wearing. Work on this slope a little bit. I think this needs to be a little bit bigger. So you can draw this whole thing with straight lines, and then start filling in the curved parts, some of the details. These ears are really tricky to get them in the right place. Using this constant, come back here, somewhere close to there is where this closer ear is, and it's at an angle leaning forward. How tall is the ear compared to our constant? It's a little taller than that. There's sort of an angle here. The back of the ear is at more of an angle. And there's a wide part of the ear. So this is giving us kind of a ballpark of where that one ear is. The other one comes out at about the same angle, goes up higher, and we can see both the front of it and the back of it. Now as we go on, you can take more measurements and more angles and figure out exactly where this nice dark line here, stripe. There's another one here. There's angles of these little places where the whiskers come out, the angles of the whiskers. And as you go on, you can put in more detail and keep checking your proportions. So starting out a drawing like this and then refining the shapes, you could take this drawing from this point and make it as realistic as you want to be by putting in the hair, using the eraser to create some of these light areas, continuing to put in more detail. And one thing that will make it more realistic is to, like you did with the cube, instead of having things defined by lines, have the cat's features defined by value, so that it stands out from the background. Take your eraser with a nice point on it and start to define this edge here that's catching the light. Put in some whiskers. Again, on a drawing like this, I would spend, to be honest, I would spend an hour or so and then probably come back to it the next day and look at it with fresh eyes and keep working on the proportions and all the details until I got to a nice finished drawing that might take 3, 4, or 5 sessions of drawing. If I was doing a painting like this, I would try to get a pretty refined drawing and then start going in with basic colors and make it as detailed as you want. When you look at a photo like this, you might see all these very fine details, the highlights on the eyes and the hair and all that. But really, if you start working on all that stuff before you get the actual proportions, you're going to take more time in the long run because you'll have to go back and undo things. So start with very general marks like we did here and work your way to the more detailed. Right now this looks more like a dog than a cat, but the general proportions are in the ballpark. They're not too far off. We just need to refine them and get it more like a cat. All right, so we'll have some assignments like this where we draw using only straight lines, and it's a good technique to work on seeing angles, seeing proportions, measuring, and really when you draw things like this, you learn to see more clearly Who thought that a cat's head was twice as long this way as it is wide? It's a very long head. You might think conceptually that a cat looks, like this, with the nose and that. And that's fine. We'll work on some other styles of drawing. But when you start looking at it in terms of shapes and not what your preconceived concepts are, you'll often be surprised at the way things really look. All right. See you later. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.